My name is Hardy Brown, and we're gonna have a conversation today on historical empathy and the resilience of the human spirit, right here on 21st Century Dialogues. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna learn a couple of things. In the learning, we're gonna take some new terms. Instead of calling them fugitives and runaways, we're gonna call them freedom seekers. Instead of calling them slaves, we're gonna call them enslaved. You have any reason why? Why we call them enslaved?
It's a state of, like, being put into a submission rather than being submitting of oneself.
They didn't choose to go into it. Exactly. They didn't choose this life for themselves. They were captured and they were enslaved until they chose to self-emancipate themselves and become these freedom seekers. They wanted to self-emancipate and get to this thing called freedom. What does freedom mean? What does freedom mean to you guys? Like the concept. We hear about that in the United States all the time. We hear about that. People talk about it. Oh, we have the great freedoms. What does it mean? As college students, what does it mean?
Getting to do whatever you want to do on your own terms.
Okay, good, yeah. As long as you're not hurting anybody else.
Right.
Yeah. What else?
The ability to be living without the fear of being hurt.
I like that. Okay.
I would say just having your own rights and self-control over yourself rather than just being owned.
Perfect.
The craziest thing still to me is that, the last paper we saw, there is someone being sold on the same paper that somebody was selling printed paper. It puts perspective like if enslaved people was just a high demand, but yet we still value it the same amount as just a piece of paper. It's crazy how that's how they're trying to promote this. It's like just trying to sell a used car.
Yeah. This is what this one says. It says, have constantly on hand the best selected assortments of field hands, house servants, and mechanics at their Negro market to be found in the city. They are daily receiving from Virginia, Kentucky, and Missouri fresh supplies of likely young Negroes. Persons wishing to purchase are invited to examine their stock before purchasing elsewhere. So it's kind of if we'll match, price match for you, is even back during this time, which is insane.
Did I explain to you what chattel means? So chattel means that you are enslaved for life. So when we think about chattel, and you think about that concept that you are a product, you are the same as a horse, a pig, you're the same as anything else that they would sell as a commodity, that's what they're talking about when they say the concept of chattel. And they would use these chains, and they would use the threat of selling your family, they would use the threat of whipping to be able to keep you in line.
So how old were children allowed to be taken away from their families?
Many times they would play with the kids, the owners' kids. They would play with them until they became of an age, sometimes anywhere between 8 and 10 and 12. And they could be sold at any time. Even as an infant, away from the mother, they could be sold that day. If there's a market for them, they could be sold that exact day, right? And so there was never safety. And when you talk about family, there was never safety in knowing if this child was even yours. This is something you've heard of, but you've never seen. A handwritten slavery bill of sale. Thomas was in his 20s to be sold for life for $1,150 in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Act of sale. Be it known that on this second day of June, 1855, I, Bernard K. of New Orleans, state of Louisiana, for and in consideration of the sum price of $1,150 cash in hand, well and truly paid, do by these presents, grant, bargain, sell, convey, transfer, assign, and set over a certain Negro man, slave for life, named Thomas, aged about 28 years.
So he was to be sold for the rest of his life. And to be sold for the rest of his life as an enslaved person, these are the documents that would have gone with his sale from one person to the next, from a slave trader to the next. They always say, you hear in the history books, because I saw in your eyes, that's a lot of money back then, right? That's a little over almost $40,000 today, which also means that he must have had skills. We were told that we're lazy, that we don't know anything, that we're ignorant, that we don't bring a skill. But the truth is we were creators, we were inventors, we were great minds that were stolen from our land, brought to a new land. We were planters. All these different things these people were. And so he must have had a skill. I don't know Thomas's story 100% as we look into it, but Thomas must have had a skill because to pay almost $40,000 for a human being